Today, let's have a look at some options with this straight bar. Now, it's just a standard barbell on a squat rack. I'm going to first go into a front lever position. Then I'm going to bring my toes to the bar. Then I'm going to do an inverted deadlift to this position. Then I'm going to bend the arms, pull myself over the bar to a top support position. So there's a few things going on there. I'm going from a front lever position that can be made much easier by going into a tuck. I went into more of a straighter position. It's easier in terms of progressions because we're only holding it for a split second in the position before we transition, but still we want to make it easier. And the easiest way to make it easier would be to start in a tuck position like this. And then the next movement was to go to this position. So that's the toes to bar position. But in some ways, entering the toes to bar that way is easier than doing it this way and then pulling my toes up towards the bar, because I'm actually already above the position and I'm lowering to it. So if you have the flexibility to fold nicely, you might find it easier to go from that tuck front lever position to the toes to bar. So from this position, look, I'm lowering to it. And you could obviously play with different progressions of the front lever and hold for different amounts of time. So we have the different progressions of the front lever that you can start in. We have the toes to bar. And remember, you can separate these movements as much as you need to and just train them by themselves on this type of setup or a higher setup. And in a lot of ways, this is actually making it easier because the floor is closer to the bar, so I don't need to pull up to that position. If you struggle and only have this type of setup, you could put a box or a bench or something here that would then allow you to lift up to the position similar to what I'm doing here off the floor. And then we have that other cool movement, the inverted deadlift. So the inverted deadlift goes from the toes to bar position. I deadlift straight arms, and then I pull up to this position and back down to that start position. So you could do that by itself 4 repetitions. It's one of those movements that once you can do it, it looks pretty easy, but you can tell by my voice, it's actually very challenging. And then we have the pullover itself. Now the pull over the bar is another one of those movements that once you've got it, it looks pretty easy. You just pull up, pull the hip over the bar and roll around it. But what most people do is they pull themselves up and they go this way. And the energy is going up and over. We want the energy to come up and over this way. And you might need to train yourself to be able to do that. One of the easiest ways to do that is if you're lucky enough to have a pull-up bar, something like this, but then you don't have this, meaning the ceiling height, and it allows you to walk up the wall and go over. Actually, I can mimic that. So if you can put together this type of setup, you can actually walk yourself up the wall to push yourself over the bar in that direction. So I walk up the wall, push myself over, and then, only just. Actually, this is what happens a lot of the time. You get stuck in this position with a hip too low on this side. So even if you're there, you still can't get over. With these bars, I can help myself. What I really need to do is get my hip over the top like that. Now, I've got enough to take me round. But that type of setup is useful if you don't quite have it. And you can't get your legs and your hips enough up and over. And in between would be to use a box or a bench or something here and have that to help push you over. You need to play around with the distance and the momentum to take you over, but that's an option. The downside of doing those is that you are using quite a bit of momentum, so you need to slow it down as much as possible to build strength and conditioning of the actual movement. And a nice way of doing it is to do an eccentric, so you could try starting in this top support position, getting yourself comfortable on the bar so you can slowly go over. Now it's hard to go slow over when you have a spinning bar like this, but now I'm in this position and I can play with taking the hip off the bar, pulling it back up, taking it off the bar a little bit, pulling myself back up. So I'm just going down a little bit and back up. So I'm getting that concentric, but I'm just concentrating on that small movement. And then most people that struggle with that still need to work on rows. And the most simplest way of working on the rows is to use this setup again, but raise your feet up as you get stronger with it. So here would be easier option. Harder option would be straighter. And then harder again would be to raise the feet up on something and row there. And then you'll just slowly get stronger with that rowing type movement. And then you can put it all together. The inverted deadlift, the toes to bar, the front lever, and the pullover. Hopefully that's got you thinking outside the box when it comes to calisthenics training and setups. I've just got a standard barbell here on a standard squat rack, but we can still do lots of options. Let me know down in the comments if you like videos like this, and if you have recommendations for other ones. Reach out if you're interested in coaching or my app. Links are down in the description, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one.